I call Kate Campbell to be followed by Graham Simpson. Kate Campbell has 6 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The irony, the absolute irony of Labour bringing this motion on public trust. 2 years ago, people in Scotland voted Labour. They voted on the promise of change. And what did they get? More of the same, only worse, actually. And that is what erodes public trust. Promising to protect the vulnerable, but then cutting winter fuel allowance, cutting disability payments. That is what erodes public trust. Promising to end sleaze, and then what did we see? Taking freebies, clothes, tickets, travel, left, right and centre. Delighted to take an intervention.
Does she also not consider stealing £400,000 at least of money donated by your members and by others for an independence referendum is a gross breach of public trust?
Kate Campbell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The member tries to distract from the fact that her government immediately took clothes, travel, tickets left, right and centre. They promised to make society fairer, but then they failed to tax billionaires and instead created a tax on jobs. It is true. And that is what erodes trust. Telling people that you are going to create growth and prosperity but having no plan to do it, failing to use any of... Oh, sorry, I thought you were making an intervention. No, just heckling. OK.
Yeah,
I'll make
if
a note of
members
that.
wish to make interventions, they know how. And Mr Kerr, if you could press your button when you're wanting to make an intervention, because it helps in terms of broadcast. Thank you. Mr Kerr.
Am I?
No, I wasn't sure if the member was just heckling or making an intervention. He never showed on the screen, so I assume it's not an intervention, and I will continue if that's okay. I will give way.
You don't have to press a button and
Stephen
appear
Kerr.
on the screen. When it comes, you don't have to press a button, for goodness sake, you just intervene. My intervention, Deputy Presiding Officer, on the member, is simply this. Is the member claiming that the Labour Party have a monopoly on broken election promises? Have you examined the record of the SNP in relation to election promises? Have you considered the fact that broken trust in Scottish politics might have a lot to do with the way that the party the member represents has governed in Scotland for the last 19 years?
Kate Campbell.
I think the record of the SNP has just been very, very clearly demonstrated by the fact that we won 58 seats in the last election. And the nearest party... Oh, Presiding Officer, they don't stop talking.
There should be no interruptions while the member has the floor.
The behaviour in this chamber is astonishing. I came from a council. I thought it was rowdy there. We are a chamber where we are making decisions about people's lives, and this behaviour, frankly, I find embarrassing. That's not debating. Debating is allowing people to speak, but I will make progress. Telling people that you are going to create growth and prosperity but having no plan to do it, failing to use any of the levers at your disposal to improve our economy or reduce the cost of living, and refusing to devolve those powers to a Scottish Government standing ready and willing to use them, that is what erodes public trust. And most of us have spent the last year or so speaking to voters, and what have they told us? They have told us that they are worried about the cost of living crisis. They're worried about the impact of global events on their lives, and they absolutely hate to see politicians who seem more interested in slinging mud than making the lives of ordinary people better. And they want politicians who take those concerns seriously. The SNP won the election, an election that, frankly, we had no business winning after 19 years in government, and we won it by a landslide. A landslide, because we put forward plans to make life better. And we showed people that we care about the same things that we do. And what happened to Labour, what happened to the Tories in that election, decimated, presiding officer. Absolutely decimated. Because, no, I'm going to make progress, because they didn't listen. They didn't come up with plans to make life better. They thought that they could just bandy around words like secretive or dishonesty, and somehow that would damage the SNP. Well, we can see how that went for them. No, I will not take an intervention. I will make progress. Well, just to make sure that everyone knows how catastrophically they have failed to learn the lessons of that defeat, Labour, for their very first debate, their first opportunity to bring something to this chamber to set out what their priorities are, they have brought this. Nothing about their vision for a better Scotland, nothing about how to improve the lives of the people they represent, just an opportunity to throw rocks at the SNP because we won the election and Labour lost it. It is so utterly depressing. And they might think it's clever to drag out lengthy debates on Peter Murrell because they think that somehow this will harm the SNP. But what they have failed to understand is this does not diminish the SNP. Our members and our supporters understand that the SNP was the victim of this crime. This debate diminishes Labour. But sadly, as a consequence, the personal attacks, the grasping at straws, the insinuation, it also diminishes our politics. It is off-putting to ordinary people and it makes politicians seem out of touch. And
the member is winding up.
That is the main cause of the loss of trust in politics. And we should all care about that because a loss of trust causes a loss of participation. And if the people don't participate, then democracy will fail. There may be those, particularly those on the populist right, who want that as an outcome. But I cannot believe that there are not good, decent members on the Labour benches who are absolutely cringing inside at this approach from Anna Selwar and Jackie Bailey. It is absolutely unfathomable that to date there has been no leadership challenge because this is so embarrassing for Labour. They lost the election badly because in place of having policies, Labour just has a visceral hatred of the SNP, and that approach was roundly rejected at the ballot. What we should be focusing on is how we make Scotland work for everyone.
Could the member be heard, please? There must be no interruptions.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What we should be focusing on is how we make Scotland work for everyone. Opposition MSPs and us SNP backbenchers, we actually have the same job. We all need to roll up our sleeves, we need to get stuck in, we need to work cross-party, and yes, we should be all challenging the Scottish Government, but robustly, constructively, to improve legislation, to make sure that our ministers have considered the impact of their plans, to flag any outcomes we might be worried about, to make representations on behalf of the communities that we represent. And government ministers must listen to our concerns, reflect on them, and take them in good faith. And when we disagree with each other, we should challenge each other, but it should be on the substance of a debate, on a point of principle, on a policy that we think the other is getting wrong. But this use of negative language, vague terms to insinuate some sort of blame or wrongdoing, frankly, Presiding Officer, it is just grim and it is not restoring anything. Open Democracy in their briefing.
Can the member wind up, please?
I will do.
Thank you.
They set out some helpful steps that we can take that they think can restore trust. It was asking us to include honesty, explaining the reasons behind decisions, being respectful and putting the public interest first. Democracy matters, trust matters. I hope that we can spend the next 5 years restoring that trust by getting policies right. But sadly, Presiding Officer, I do not think that this debate will contribute to that.